welcome to this Sea Ranch Life. The Sea Ranch Thespians, our local theater company, will be producing the world premiere of a brand new play entitled Cicero's Lisp. Today, we'll visit with the playwright Richard Manley. Cicero's Lisp will be the third play by Manley staged by the Thespians and promises to be an engaging comedy drama performance. Richard, thanks for joining us today on This Sea Ranch Life, our little podcast here, where we talk about interesting things in Sea Ranch and the surrounding community. Um, Richard, a lot of our Sea Ranch thespians will be, if they're not familiar with you, they're familiar with your work because two of your plays have been produced here at the Sea Ranch. Question of Words, which incidentally was one of the first thespian productions I ever saw. In fact, I think it was the first one I ever saw here, and I remember it. I remember it well. The other one that is played here is a fish story that was produced, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So our theater going audience, whether they know you or not, they're familiar with your work. This next one that's coming up, the spring production of the Thespians, is called Cicero's Lisp. And before we dive, I'm a little curious about the title here, and I wasn't aware. Is it thought that Cicero had a lisp?
No,
Okay, I thought he was, one of the most well-known ancient orators.
he
So,
was. I was very young at the time, but he did not have a lisp.
okay, okay, that's we got that cleared up for everyone.
It's a
Tell.
metaphor. It's a metaphor in the play that the cantankerous old man who plays the lead is a way of describing something that he's trying to get across to his niece, and so he uses that because it's a more original way of putting it than Achilles' heel, which would be more
Yeah,
appropriate and
right.
more well known.
Understand. Okay, thank you. That clears that up. Give us a little summary. The main character that you just referred to is an individual named Max. And tell us a little bit about Max.
Well, Max owns a bookstore, a big bookstore that's well known in some large metropolitan city. Could be LA, could be New York, could be anywhere. It could be Seattle for that matter. But he's owned this for a long time. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten less patient with people who don't read and don't think very deeply and aren't terribly curious. He'll spend a half an hour with a teenager that's really curious about what to read, but he won't give 5 minutes to somebody who's just buying a book to show off for his neighbors. So he's gotten more difficult as time has gone on. And during the pandemic, he almost went out of business because he's old school. He didn't know how to make changes to accommodate the fact that people couldn't come in the store. And his niece, actually his grandniece, but they go back and forth between calling each other uncle and niece because it's easier. She's another key character. She stepped in. She was on a postdoc program at MIT, very, very bright young woman. And she put her career on hold while she taught him how to bring the bookstore up to speed in a world that was now relying upon Amazon and deliveries rather than walking into the store, et cetera. So he has now settled into having her run the store. She's managing the store, and he is the overseer. So he still greets people. He still works in the store. He still alienates a whole lot of people
Okay.
that he doesn't have time for. But he also loves anybody who's willing to investigate the power of books. And so he's got this dichotomy where he considers that his flaw, his Cicero's lisp. In other words,
Ah,
Cicero did have a lisp that would have screwed with his reputation. And so he sees his willingness to really go all out for somebody that he cares about or that he respects, whereas most of the time he's just a curmudgeon. And so his lisp, his flaw, if you will, is that certain people he will give the great deal of time to because he respects them more than others.
wow. And so now he's plugging along. His niece has helped him jump the digital divide, so to speak. So that
Exactly.
so that
As he says, he realizes that a hard drive is no longer going from LA to San Diego without a bathroom.
Yeah, okay. Got it. Very good. Very good. And then is there some is that the main sort of crisis point when he has to make this shift, or does the story continue some other
Yes.
element that enters the story?
The crisis is when his life is in jeopardy because he's gone through his entire life without ever being in a hospital overnight. He's healthy, he's fit, he eats the right foods, and yet he has a family history of cardiac problems, of
Oh,
plaque, being very friendly with his blood vessels, his arteries. And so he ends up with a crisis having to do with almost having a heart attack. He's he's in very difficult condition quickly, and he's fighting with, do I just ignore it or do I actually do something? And when his niece realizes that this is serious, she's pushing very hard to get him to go see a doctor. And so the crisis is first,
uh,
what does he do? Does he actually stop and take care of himself and do the right thing? And then the next crisis is he decides, well, I don't know whether I should give it away, but there is one more crisis as he further deals with this problem.
okay. Yeah. No, don't give it away. We want to leave something for our viewers here to entice them to come to the program. Would you characterize this play as I'm reading something that the Thespians put up a little blurb they put up on the play, and they referred to it as a comedy drama, which
Yes.
sounds which is it, a comedy or a drama?
That's a good question. I call it a literate comedy, meaning it is a play on words. It is an interesting examination of the power of words if we use them properly, and yet it's meant to be funny because it's a very serious subject that could get maudlin easily, and I don't want it to. I want it to be funny. I want it to be something where you can get to these interesting questions while laughing all the way. Um,
Uh,
I think that so it's both a drama and a comedy, but I call it a literate comedy in that it's appealing to your intelligence in the humor, but it is still funny.
Okay, okay. Hey, tell our folks here a little bit. You you had kind of a regular corporate career for a lot of, I'd call it a corporate career for a lot of your life in the advertising world,
Right.
and then you stopped all that and decided writing and playwriting, and you've written a number of books, I understand,
Well,
also.
plays,
Plays,
plays.
okay.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that journey of yours from advertising to a playwright and how you got there. You know, both involve words, I suppose, but totally different outcomes.
Yes, I was a copywriter long enough to think that that was really the same thing as a writer. It's sort of like the Hallmark is a Hallmark guy. The guy that writes Hallmark cards is not really a poet. Uh,
Right.
Anyway, I worked for someone else as the president of an advertising agency for a while, and then I stopped and started my own graphic design firm in San Francisco, and I owned that and ran that and was the sort of the creative force overseeing everything. But I'm not trained as a designer. But I did do copy. I did name companies back in the 1990s, and at some point, my wife was a partner at Anderson, and we were both working impossible hours. I was enjoying the business, but we just didn't have time to spend money on anything other than, so to speak, getting to and from work. And
Yeah.
so we kept trying to come up with a way to take a break from our lives to see if there was something else that we might enjoy doing. And I had always enjoyed writing. I've kept journals for 40 years, thinking someday I'm going to write these things into stories or short stories or plays. And in 2000, we finally were fed up with not finding any solutions to change our lives, and we came up with something dramatic. And that was to sell everything we owned. We had a house, a beautiful house in San Francisco, two cars, a motorcycle, a variety of things. And we opted to take a year to sell everything we owned and to leave the United States with no reservations anyplace to shake up our lives, to take 2 or 3 months in Europe and just see if we could sit down and say, okay, this is what I really want to do, or this is a different life that's more interesting.
Mhm.
And so we left the United States. We did that. We sold everything. And we left the United States with suitcases. That was the only thing we owned. Uh, and we ended up in Europe thinking we'd be there for 2 or 3 months. In 2001, we left in the Christmas or the late December 2001, and we ended up staying there for 10 years, wandering
Wow.
around. We'd come back periodically to visit family, but we would, in those days, there was no Airbnb. We'd rent apartments, furnished apartments in Paris for several months, and then move to London or then go to Italy. And I started writing, and Jennifer realized that she wanted a different kind of career, but still in business. And um, and so that's when I really got hooked on the feeling of creating sentences, of creating stories around interesting individuals, of exploring language for what it could do, its power. And as an avid reader, I already knew its power affecting me, but here I was now experimenting with how it might affect other people. And so I began to write plays. And we eventually came back and bought a place in New York, settled down there, and I began to write plays.
Wow. Wow. That's kind of an interesting path that you took. It just occurred to me while you were speaking. Back in the many decades ago, you might have taken a crack at a book like Europe on $5 a day. Of course, when you did this, you'd have to retitle it Europe on $1,000 a day, or something like that to make it work. But that's well, that's a fascinating sort of step to take. It's kind of it's actually a huge step. You're kind of just putting away everything you've done in your life up to
Yeah,
that point.
we shook up our lives entirely, and it was
Yeah,
one of the most exciting 10 years that we have in our entire lives. It
that's
was wonderful.
fantastic.
It was wonderful.
Wow, that's really cool. So you've worked with the Sea Ranch Thespians on two prior productions. Um, I will say this: the first one I saw, The Question of Words, struck me. That play, even though it's been 10 years since I saw it, um, that's a play that really lives in the world of words and the importance of words. It really came across to me. That was my impression was the use of words. It was a good story, but if it hadn't been crafted in the way you used words, I don't think it would have been as successful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That again is what I would call a literate comedy, in that it was
Yeah.
funny, but it was also literate. And there's an interesting story on how I met Sea Ranch, the people at Sea Ranch. Is that play won the Ashland New Play Award that year,
Okay.
and then a theater came to see it. There's a reading at Ashland. Theater came to see it and asked to produce it in Oregon. They then did a full production of that play, and someone from Sea Ranch attended that production and then
Yeah.
found out who I was and called me and said, "We'd like to do this at Sea Ranch. Would you be interested?" And I didn't know Sea Ranch even had a theater. So my wife had gone up and I had gone up there repeatedly to spend weekends to just get away from our business. But so I said, well, I'd like to meet you first and see what kind of plays you do, et cetera. And so I came up, we both came up, and when I saw those photographs on the wall and the playbills and realized they were doing serious theater,
Yeah.
I liked what they said about how they prepared, and I liked the sets that they had and the way that the whole thing was organized. I said, yeah, let's do it. So they did that play, and I came up for a few days and did talkbacks, just a couple of days.
Right.
And that was apparently well received because normally they're doing plays by playwrights that are dead. So there isn't any
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
interact.
For the most part. Yeah. Yeah.
Famous but dead. And
Yeah.
so here I was able to take some questions, and I loved it. I mean, for me, that's part of what I love about playwriting is the circle that's completed. When you finish something and create something in your own head, you throw it out to an audience who feeds it back to you in the way they react and the questions they ask from their head. And so that circle is completed even though we don't know each other. And I find that a fascinating aspect of playwriting. So after that, when they did a fish story, I said, I'll do talkbacks every night. I love it. And so they give me this wonderful house overlooking the ocean, and they take great care of me, and they're just wonderful people. I mean, they're a second family now.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And so now you've been here for some number of the rehearsals of Cicero's Lisp.
I was
And
just here last week for about 5 days. Yeah.
yeah, and this is the first time. Uh, I guess you'd call this a world premiere. This is the first time this
Yes.
play has been staged anywhere.
Well,
And
a backstory there is this play is about me. I went through
yeah,
the operation he's going to go through in the play, and almost everything that happens in the play happened to me. But the moment I finished this play, it took me longer to write it because it was so personal, and I didn't want it to be maudlin. I didn't want it to be sad. I wanted it to be funny so that we could actually talk about it.
yeah,
And as soon as I finished the play, which took 2 years, I sent it directly to Sea Ranch. I didn't
ah,
send it to anybody else. I said, if you guys want to do this, I want to work with you on it. And
oh, yeah, that's fantastic. And there it is. That's funny that you mentioned because one of my I didn't include this in my questions, but one of my thoughts was how autobiographical is Max in this, and you've just told us you in some form you've been Max
yes,
in your life. So that's great. Tell us about the future. Are you going to keep writing plays? Will we see some more output from you and possibly future plays at Sea Ranch?
I hope so. I love being there, and I love the interaction. And this is the first time last week, the first time I've come up in the middle of the process, and that's also fascinating. So yes, I will keep writing plays. I'm also trying to fashion a short story. I've never tried that. It's a totally different way of writing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure where that will lead, but I intend to keep writing plays, or two or three that I have started that I haven't finished. But Sea Ranch is is the first place I mail anything these days.
Like maybe a testing ground in a way, where you know you're going to get a reasonably warm reception from
Yes, and
folks.
they've got good people. They've got good solid sets. They design good sets for that kind of theater. And
Yeah,
Kathy's just been marvelous as a director.
that's fantastic. Well, Richard, thanks so much for taking some time with us. Um, the For our viewers, the plays begin in late May. I'm sorry, I don't have the dates right in front
Yeah,
of
so the
me.
last 2 weeks of May. So it's
Yeah,
Thursday through Sunday, the third week, and then the same thing, Thursday through Sunday, the fourth week.
right. And we'll include some information at the end of this program about how you get tickets, which are free, but you need to reserve a ticket. And the bonus is Richard will be there. You'll be there for each performance, and
Yep.
we'll get to talk with you, ask questions, etc. after the performance. Get into your head a little bit
I
more.
I love it. In past visits, people have stopped me in the supermarket and wanted to have conversations.
that's
I love
that's
it. I love it a lot.
you're in good footing there. Diane Keaton, when she was alive, would annually show up at Sea Ranch for a week or two, and I never saw her here, but it was sort of a small point of pride if you ran into her at the grocery store. You could say, "Oh, I saw Diane Keaton at the grocery store." You know how people like to talk about an occasional bump into a celebrity, but
Right.
you're on the right track. Let's put it that way.
All right. Well, appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We've been talking to Richard Manley. He's the playwright for Cicero's Lisp, which will be performed world premiere by the Sea Ranch Thespians. Thanks again for your time, Richard.
You're welcome.
We've been visiting with Richard Manley, whose latest play, Cicero's Lisp, will be produced by the Sea Ranch Thespians. Performances are May 21st through 24th and May 28th through 31st. Tickets are free, but you'll need to make reservations at SeaRanchThespians.com. Thanks for joining us at This Sea Ranch Life. Until next time, take care of yourself and, if you can, someone else.